Well, now to the obesity epidemic. Instead of treating the problem with healthier eating, the United States turning to big pharma to solve its problems. Not surprising. Let me read this stunning new headline. This is one of those headlines that just had my jaw hit the floor. I thought it was like a fake Onion article or a Babylon Bee article, but no, it's real. Here it is. Children struggling with obesity should be evaluated and treated early and aggressively, including with medications for kids as young as 12 and surgery for those as young as 13, according to new guidelines released on Monday. Joining me now is a whistleblower who was in the room where it happened. He watched as Coca Cola lobbied Congress with millions of dollars to make sure soda was included in the food stamps program. It's part of America's healthy eating program. And now he's blowing the whistle on corruption. Calley Means is the founder of TrueMed, and he joins me now. Calley, welcome to the show. You have an amazing story. I want to get into the Coca Cola side of this and your history there. But first, just your reaction to these new guidelines being rolled out this week.
I think every parent should be absolutely aghast. I don't know when it became a political virtue to blindly trust pharma companies, but the fact that there's an obesity epidemic among preteens, right? And the answer is a lifelong injection. This is by on the FDA label. This is a lifelong injection, getting 12-year-olds addicted to pharma, an injection. There's this gaslighting going on. 60 Minutes ran a shameful piece. 75% of their advertising comes from pharma. And they said that there's limited side effects. According to the reports, it's 75% of people who get this injection have gastrointestinal issues. Just one quick note on that. 95% of our serotonin, which regulates our happiness and entire mental state, is produced in the gut. So there's already reports of mass depression increase from getting this injection, and we're putting 12-year-olds on. The last thing I'll just say real quickly, and this ties into the food thing, is it's really just a devil's bargain between food and healthcare in this country. Obesity, prediabetes among young adults is now 25%. Obesity or diabetes or prediabetes among adults is now 50%. 93% of the country's metabolic dysfunctional. This is because of our food system, which we can talk about. And then pharma, instead of talking about those factors, instead of talking about the underlying factors that are making Americans sick, they're creating these miracle cures that, I think we know how that's going to go.
Can you talk about this injection? So this idea, you have a 12-year-old who's got 10, 15 pounds of extra body weight on. And the government is saying, okay, instead of eating, organic ground beef or other fresh foods, living a healthy lifestyle, getting out and exercising, we'd rather partner up with Big Pharma and give you an injection. What does this injection do? Like, what does this do to the young?
The mechanism is it suppresses appetite. So you might eat a little bit less, but I think this is a core point. If a child is eating inflammatory, bad food and living a sedentary lifestyle, that's not changing. That inflammatory food, their diet, is coming into their body. They're not learning not to eat, massive
seed
amounts
oils,
of added sugar, seed oils, processed grains, which is the foundation of the diet, which, again, the government and a crony capitalist scheme subsidizes inexplicably tens of billions of dollars. So even if you're eating a little bit less, which I'm questioning whether that even will work long term because all drugs wear off and this is a lifetime drug, you're still, that child is eating inflammatory foods. And I think this is actually an important trend to note with pharma. The more drugs we prescribe for certain chronic conditions, the more those conditions go up. The more statins we've prescribed, the more heart disease goes up. The more metformin we've prescribed, the more diabetes has gone up. The more SSRIs we've prescribed, 25% of the country of the United States is now on a mental health medication. The more depression, suicide has gone up. I will guarantee you that long term, this drug will not decrease obesity because it creates a moral hazard. Parents and children think that they're doing something, but they're not. You are not going to outsmart and out-hack the underlying physiology of the body. And the fact is, our food system has been weaponized and taken over by some bad forces. And then our pharma and healthcare companies are silent on that, but then are just profiting. And everyone's getting sicker.
It's so sad. I mean, instead of having kids wake up in the morning and eat like farm fresh eggs, right? Eggs and something healthy for breakfast, right? Instead, the the advertising and big government has partnered to tell us to eat breakfast cereals, which is one of the worst things you can possibly eat as a human being, right? Processed grain breakfast cereals, like eat crap breakfast cereals. Your kid is hungry then 1 hour after getting to school. Is there any wonder why? Because it's empty, awful calories. They're getting an injection and they're going to keep eating this way. So instead of getting rid of this stuff in the house and actually feeding them fresh foods, we're injecting our kids and they're continuing to eat this seed oil based garbage.
Yeah, and I come from I'm a conservative, and I believe in individual choice. But I think these companies have hijacked the idea of individual responsibility, because it's not personal responsibility that 5-year-olds now are obese at an increasing rate, right? There's something rigged going on. And I think you make a great point about the studies telling people to eat, Fruit Loops over eggs right now. That gets into being a consultant for Food and Pharma earlier, and I actually saw that we talked about, and I've tweeted about how they've weaponized civil rights groups, the NAACP, literally transactionally to call opponents of Coke spending and food stamps, which is ridiculous, racist. They've weaponized think tanks, conservative and left-leaning think tanks, to produce fake studies. But the most shocking thing is what they do with universities, and I still think this is not fully realized by most people. When a new study comes out and says a peer-reviewed study funded by the NIH from a top research university, that's pretty unimpeachable. But what I saw working for Coke and Pharma is that university research teams were essentially PR operations for special interests. You obviously have that with pharma. 80% of NIH grants go to researchers for pharma drugs that have a direct conflict of interest with the drug they're studying. From opioids on down, it's just a complete scandal. But it also happens with food. So you mentioned, the disastrous 1990s food pyramid, which recommended more sugar, more carbs, was founded on research from Harvard that was paid for by the sugar industry. But now the updated guidance, the preeminent NIH tough study that the NIH funded millions of dollars, also funded by food companies, literally says that Lucky Charms are 3 times healthier than eggs, that Honey Nut Cheerios are 3 times more healthier than a piece of organic beef. I mean, this is crazy, but it would be funny if that didn't then filter into our schools. And then, of course, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which credentials pediatricians. This is not a fringe group. This is a group that every parent in the country is told by the medical community to listen to for their child's advice. They are a fully owned subsidiary of Pharma. It's right on their website. You can go right on their website. You can see their funders. It's all Pharma. And they have shamefully this week, instead of telling parents and kids and guiding them and guiding public policy to fix this broken food system, they're telling 12-year-olds that they should get a lifelong injectable.
It's unbelievable. You were, as I mentioned at the beginning, you were in the room where it happened. You were watching Coke. You were watching, as a consultant, you were seeing how they were lobbying Congress to make sure that these things were included in the food stamps program, and how they would lobby and make sure that money was going and funneling into these different studies, so that the very studies that they were funding were the ones coming back supporting that they would get grants and money inside of the government. And it's unbelievable. Can you talk a little bit about that Coke angle on this story?
Yeah, the playbook is weaponizing institutions of trust, right? And this is very instructive, right? Food stamps, whether we could agree with the logic of that program or not, it's a $110 billion government program that 15% of Americans rely on for nutrition, right? And the number one item purchased on food stamps is soda. And 10% of all food stamp funding is sugary drinks, which are diabetes bombs. An American child is eating over 100 times more sugar than they did 100 years ago, which is obviously leading to this disaster on obesity. 80%, as we know all the stats, but 80% of American adults are overweight or obese. And then kids are really on the chopping block. So clearly ridiculous in a government nutrition program to have the number one item be sugary drinks, and 70% of funding going to processed food, which is just crazy, right? So Coke wanted to keep it that way. They weaponized institutions of trust. What was shocking to me, looking back, and now I'm devoting my life to fix this, is working with the NAACP, the most celebrated civil rights group in the United States. It's very transactional. The conversations are shockingly transactional. They say the quiet part out loud. It's, we're going to give you millions of dollars, and the NAACP will call parents who are concerned about their kids eating 100 times more sugar than they did 100 years ago racist. DC is a swamp, as we all know, but it was shocking to me being a pretty ideological kid growing up, interning at the Heritage Foundation in college, how you just go into these think tanks and buy studies. Interestingly, I also saw organizations pay conservative think tanks to label things as not a tax. These think tanks are actually able to be paid to say that a tax isn't a tax. So you're actually able to go both ways. In this case, obviously, it was actually paying for PR from the conservative, to say, oh, this is an infringement on freedom, even though I don't think it's freedom for the government to be paying $10 billion for lower income children to drink sugary drinks, which immediately gives them diabetes. And then universities. I mean, we have to be skeptical of every single peer-reviewed study. We have to be asking why. You can make a study say anything. You can ask any question. And the corporate interests, particularly pharma and the processed food companies, are dictating what questions are asked. A stat that I think really pops out to me is processed food companies in the United States spend 11 times more on nutritional research than the NIH. And the NIH itself is very corrupted too.
That's unbelievable. So Coke lobbies the NAACP to label the tax on soda as racist. They lobby to make sure that soda is included in the food stamps program, and then it's unbelievable. 10% of the food stamps,
and then 10 years later, as obesity is skyrocketing, now there's a massive push funded by the media and the news media in the United States, which relies on pharma ad dollars, to get the American taxpayer to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to subsidize obesity injections instead of thinking about the incentives of our food system. I think it's a first order issue. I'm really glad the left has been on this issue, nutrition, but the right's really waking up. I mean, looking at male sperm count going down 50% and what's happening in this country, it's a first order issue. Our precious human capital is being destroyed.
I want to get you out of here on this, and because I think you're right about that. When I was in Philadelphia as a news anchor for Good Day Philadelphia many moons ago, I remember the soda tax. I remember the discussions about the big soda tax and all of this, and there is that conservative side of me, of course, that's like, government, stay away. I don't drink soda. I used to be addicted to it in college. I don't touch it anymore. I haven't had one in, 20 years or longer, because I know what it does to the body. But it's my choice, right? It's my choice. But I get that side of it. I get that conservative side of it. But then when you literally have these corporations who are weaponizing it, and so it in many ways, the patient, the people are taken out of the equation. They don't get to make the same sort of choices anymore.
Right.
They're forced into this, right? I mean, it's the conservative piece of this is kind of like the tricky part of this, isn't it?
Well, to me, it's clear now. Let's not even talk about taxes. Let's leave that off the table, because I agree. I don't like taxes either as a public policy instrument. Let's just look at grain subsidies, grain and corn subsidies. It's tens of billions of dollars a year, and the corn goes into high fructose corn syrup. And we don't need to get too into the science, but high fructose corn syrup is different than even table sugar. Fructose shuts off hunger signals. So all of our food, fructose didn't really exist until the 1970s. All of our food has been weaponized with fructose, a specific kind of sugar that literally makes you less hungry. It's in fruit for bears to, load up to hibernate. It literally, evolutionarily, fructose shuts off the hunger signals. So our food's been weaponized with fructose that we subsidize. We have government programs that are rigged. So forget taxes. We're just paying tens of billions of dollars of subsidies and handouts for the American people to get more addicted to sugar. And then, of course, the downstream effects of that are trillions of dollars of healthcare costs. So I couldn't think of a less conservative policy. So it's grain subsidies, it's reforming food stamps, and we got to think about healthcare. Our company, and what I really like is the HSA FSA instrument, which gives consumers choice. It's like a choice account, and you can actually use that to buy healthy food in certain ways and exercise to stay healthy, which is where healthcare policy needs to go. So I actually think there's some bipartisan. Let's take away the crony capitalism. Let's start with that. And we should all agree on that, because our kids are on the chopping block right now.
Yeah. And then corn syrup and ethanol and now we're being forced to drive with this stuff in our cars.
And the last thing I'd just say is Bill Ackman, the famous hedge fund manager, retweeted what I wrote recently and said, class action like the cigarette companies. I think that's another potentially free market solution as well, because these companies have knowingly wrought damage on the American people. And I think that's another avenue. There's also bipartisan congressional investigation interest, which I'm hearing several Congress people have actually DM'd me there's, I think, a real appetite and grassroots hunger to hold these companies accountable, which I think is appropriate.
I want to get you out of here on this question. I know I said I was going to get you out a second ago, but on Michelle Obama, okay? I don't care where your politics are, not you personally, but the audience here, where they come down on the Obamas and all of that. But Michelle Obama, when she became First Lady, one of the programs that she wanted to put in place was eating healthier, right? And there was a lot of pushback against that. And then it shifted. And the reports are because of the money and the lobbyists that got angry with her for saying eat healthier. Instead, then it shifted to just go out in your garden and move more. Move more and garden, and it got away from the healthy eating. You were in Washington at the time, I believe.
Yeah.
So was that part of this machine that got her to stop talking about healthy eating?
Big time. So the key thing to understand is 78% of U.S. states, the largest employer is either a hospital company or Walmart, or the largest food seller in the United States. So Walmart gave her program, came in, muscled in, gave her program tens of millions of dollars, a ton of money, and basically said, let's focus more on exercise. Let's focus more on farming. Let's get away from food. Any group that talks, exercise is vital, but any group that's saying the obesity crisis because of exercise is being bought off by food, it's a talking point. I think there was a good effort, right? It eventually bought off and she went the wrong way. But it should be the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense talking about this issue. I think it's around 20% or less of 21-year-olds right now in America are even eligible. Well, they're lowering the standards, but based on previous standards, we're even eligible to join the military. We have an absolute human capital crisis in this country. It needs to be the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Defense, and the President of the United States. Our rigged food system is a first-order issue, and then pharma and hospitals are just profiting, and it's going to take our country bankrupt.
Yeah, we're watching it in action. Calley Means, I appreciate your work. Thank you for being out there on the ramparts on this issue. I'd love to have you back and do a really deeper dive on your history of Coke against in the Coke battle and all of that. So I know you're busy. I know you've got congressmen blowing you up, and that's good. That's a good thing.
The fact that they're blowing me up says there's not a lot of information.
See?
The fact that they're blowing me up says that there's there we go. It's it's an honor to be able to help. This is a first order issue, and we should be concerned about our kids here. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Calley. We really appreciate you joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable too. You think about the Michelle Obama piece of that, right? And Walmart sending all of this money. But it is, and when you see the seed oils, when you see that when we switch to low fat and processed food, that we see an explosion of obesity and diabetes and disease in this country, and they want us to be sick. They want to control it. They want us to be sick to go on these medications.
It's awful. It's awful. And sometimes
I've always found interest. Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
I was just going to say I've always found it really interesting that as a healthy alternative to soda, they'll push juice, and so you see that really in young kids, where they're just like, juice, apple juice and orange juice. It's literally the same thing. It's just like a fructose bullet to the pancreas, and they're both exactly the same in how your body treats it. One is not more healthy than the other. Fruit is more healthy than soda, but fruit juice is not.
Or as we've talked here before, David and I too, about the food pyramid, right? The joke of the food pyramid.
Yes.
It's like, and Calley just talked about that, right? Which is the disaster that the food pyramid. And then, you had the fact that you have ketchup is considered a vegetable.
Yes.
When it literally has sugar inside of it, which is a poison. Sugar hits the body the same way that rat poison does.
Yeah.
Look it up. You can actually study that about what sugar does to the body. It's the same thing as hits the body the same way that rat poison does.
I once went into a Cracker Barrel, and the waitress said, the vegetable of the day is brown rice. And I was like, and she goes, it's debatable, I know, and I was like, I don't think it is.
I don't think there is any debate.
I don't think that's debatable. You like that?
She's like, well, of the day is bread.
But it is covered in a fattening mushroom cream sauce. So does that take a...
Yeah, and the way she said it, like
Mushrooms
you knew that people
either,
had been giving her stuff all day about it. Yeah. She's like, I have to
debatable.
say it.
The vegetable of the day is...
brown rice.
Brown rice.
Yeah.
Is high fructose corn syrup.
I wonder if you could, if you got a story for me like that. I like it. I want to hear it.
But maybe we've got over 40,000 people watching right now on this show. Can we make a commitment, all of us, at the beginning of this year, like to pay attention to all of those television commercials that are being served up to you? None of them are good, right? I mean, if we can go back to where we were as a farming culture, back with eggs and having fresh meats, and away from this processed system, away from these seed oils, away from all of this stuff, we might, start to eliminate cancer. We might start to drop weight dramatically, eliminate diabetes. And so, I think the time is now to maybe say enough is enough of these big corporations and big pharma running the show.
Yes.
But we'll see more.
Can I throw a quick anecdote in here? Like from when I first moved to Portland, it was like within like the first couple of weeks I moved to Portland, we ran into, it was like me and my now ex-wife, we ran into this couple that had, I think their kid was about 6, and his teeth were black, like rotted kind of black. And so after we kind of like talked with these people a bit, because we ran into them on the street, I asked my ex-wife, I was like, what's up with his teeth? And it's like, I've asked him. They said, he just loves his soda. He just can't get enough of it. And so, and I'm like, I just lost it. I absolutely lost it. And I was like, this kid can't make his own decisions like that.
Yeah.
Like, and they're just that's what he wants to drink. We're just giving him the freedom.
That's a thing in like West Virginia and places like that where they really like, that's all kids drink is soda. They have really bad teeth problems because of soda, Mountain Dew specifically.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to live in Bluefield, West Virginia, and I used to watch that. I mean, it was like there was an addiction to Mountain Dew. So
I've seen that too. Soda in the baby bottle, for toddlers and stuff. And
oh my gosh.
I mean, you think, that goes straight to the teeth. I mean, you try to set your kids up for success and, like set them up to make good choices on their own. And there was a study that I read when our kids were toddlers that showed that kids who were given cereal, specifically sugary cereal for breakfast, when they were then later offered a variety of yogurts, they always chose the yogurt with the same sugar content as the cereal that they were fed every day, which shows that you are training your kids when you give them these sugary foods towards a sugary palate. And it makes their lives harder. Then they're not able to eat more bitter foods that are good for you. So, there you go with that.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.